Shalom, y'all. We are going over Genesis chapter 38. We had to bite our tongues because we was about to start talking about it when we first got on the call. We was like, hold on, we're not recording yet. Let's save it because it's just so much. It's so much in this chapter. I'm excited. Again, like this Bible study is aimed for us to get deep, like not saying that we have all this knowledge, but deep in the sense that we are digging deep into our hearts so that we can practically apply Yah's word, his wisdom, and his ways to our life. So this is what this platform is for. Y'all, the notes are kind of long tonight. I kind of got carried away. I was doing them last night. I got to the zone. It's like 6 pages of notes. So I don't know. Hopefully we might be able to get through all of it because, I mean, it is a lot, but I don't know. We're just going to go with the flow and just see what happens. Okay.
Can
All
you
right.
help me find out how I can get back to the notes? Because now that the chat is up, I can't access them. I don't know where they went.
There should be a tab that says more.
Yeah,
And notes should be the
got
option to
it.
open the notes should be there.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Verse 1. And it came to pass at that time that Judah went down from his brethren and turned into a certain Adulamite, whose name was Hirah. Judah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite, whose name was Shua, and he took her and went unto her. And so in this first one, the first thing I popped out was saw. And I remember back when we were doing Genesis 3 study, we talked about how Eve, I put in here, the woman saw that the fruit was good for food. It was pleasing to her eye and it was desirable. So in the same sense, Judah saw her, he gazed upon her, he regarded it, he wanted to know more about her, even though he knew like it says here in the Testament. I put some clips in here from the Testament of Judah. In Testament of Judah, he says, and I knew that the race of the Canaanites was wicked, but the impulse of my youth blinded my mind. And when I saw her pouring out wine, owning to the intoxication of the wine, I was deceived and took her, although my father had not counseled it. And so I want to go a little bit further back to put this one part in here before we start talking, because this is just something to talk about before we even get even further. Because in Genesis 28, 1-6, we see that Isaac had already made a charge to his sons, and we know that those charges are passed down because the establishment of the house. He charged his son, saying, "You shall not take a wife from the daughters of Canaan." He gave him a charge, which is a commandment, which is an order, which is he's appointing this new rule, saying, "You shall not take a wife from the daughters of Canaan." But again, he said his father didn't counsel; he did it anyway. And so, one of the first things in the New Testament that pulled in this particular part of these first 2 verses is in James 1:14. It says, each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desires and enticed. Then after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. Again, saying how Judah knew that he was not supposed to marry her. Like we talked about, your knowledge of something means nothing if you don't apply that wisdom of the knowledge that Yah gave you. So in this sense, Judah knows better, but he does not guard the command of his father to preserve his life. And so 2 Peter 1-5, add to your faith virtue, and to virtue knowledge, and to knowledge self-control, because the self-control leads to perseverance of godliness. And so it's like, if you know what Yah says to do, but you don't have the self-control to do it, or you lack self-control and you do the opposite of what you know is righteous, you have there, in a sense, gone outside of the gate of the protection, and you're no longer preserving your life. So I just want to stop there before we go any further. Comments, commentary.
I was gonna say that's code for she was a brick house. Cause I mean he just lost it and just jumped straight in, got to have it. That's first thought. But then also what is it? The lust of the eye, lust of the flesh, and pride of life. So but a lot of books from the tribes, the sons, they were saying how they battled with lust or, fleshly, like the eye gate was serious for them as far as their desires and lack of self-control, right?
Okay, so again, so I'm glad we talked about self-control because it goes further down in Second Peter, second self-control to perseverance and perseverance godliness, and those who lack these things are short-sighted even to blindness. And so we hear Judah in his testament saying that like he was blinded by the impulse of his youth. And so again, impulse is the opposite of self-control. If we're acting in impulse, then we're acting in the flesh. And so the proverb that stood out to me, like as I was reading this, I just thought about like a man without self-control is like a city broken down, left without walls. And so we're going to see this whole proverb manifest in the life of Judah because he lacked self-control. He lacked virtue. He was moving on his impulse and his evil desires. And then we see the destruction of his entire house literally be like a city without walls, all because he did not have self-control. And the trickle effect dang near uprooted Judah up out the earth, like as a whole. Okay, verse 3. So he married her, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son whose name was She conceived again and gave birth to a son whose name was Onan. She gave birth to still another son and named him Shelah. It was at Kezeb that she gave birth to him. Judah got a wife for his first son, and her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in Yahuwah's sight, so Yahuwah put him to death. Then Judah said to Onan, sleep with your brother's wife and fulfill your duty as her brother-in-law to raise up offspring for your brother. But Onan knew that the child would not be his, so whenever he slept with his brother's wife, he spilled his semen on the ground to keep from providing offspring for his brother. What he did was wicked in Yahuwah's sight, so Yahuwah put him to death also. Before I get into my notes, is there anything that kind of stuck out to you guys while y'all are reading this?
Are they all going through a time period of like not studying with elders anymore, or like they don't believe, fat meat greasy, like what? Like, you just get to be disobedient, just do whatever you want. Like they don't fear. They're really just going about themselves. And I mean, it could be because they're mixing, wives and other people and stuff who wasn't in alignment. But at the same time, it's like there's no babysitter, there's no like elder, somebody, to come kind of like, hey, you going off track, get back over here type of thing, or, just stewards. Like Israel, Jacob had people in his house that stood with him. His daddy had people in his house, just to watch over, like, no, and they revered, they, were scared of Yah and try to get, but I mean, whether he did this in secret or not, it seems like it's a pattern of everybody doing their own thing. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of scary in itself, especially if your brother just passed. Like your brother just passed and it was said he was wicked. And, maybe you needed some counsel on why that wasn't a bad thing, because it still seems like if you heard from Yah, he told you to do that. But it's just like no big brothers, no elders or anybody around to kind of help steer them.
So when I was reading this, it made me think about, so I put in the notes, like Judah is still moving in the same evil spirit, the same evil desire he did while he was plotting and selling Joseph. There's no heart posture change in Judah. So that same uncleanliness that was in him when they were plotting to do this evil towards their brother was in him. We talked about that generational passing on of that corrupt DNA is now in his kids. And on top of that, he married a Canaanite woman who was already wicked. He got wickedness in his heart. What's going to produce from that? So Judah is void of wisdom. He's void. He doesn't have soundness of mind. He's not moving in righteousness. He was moving in the flesh in both of these situations. So the choice to act in evil led to him marrying evil, which led to him producing evil, which led to death, which is the death of his sons. And so he literally had children of Belial. You know, that's mentioned when we're talking about Eli's sons who knew righteousness. They worked the temple. They understood. So it wasn't that there wasn't wise counsel around. It was that these children have a root of wickedness in them that is now producing foolishness. And again, like you said, sis, there's no accountability. So in Eli's situation, we see that he does chasten them, but they just ignore what he's saying and move on anyway. So it's like, even if there was some kind of chastening or some accountability, the sons themselves were so not Yah's kids that it was just like they were set in their wickedness. And so I broke down like children of Belial, which is like children of ruin, children of destruction, of worthlessness, good for nothing, unprofitable. So that is literally what we're seeing in Judah's son. They can't do nothing right. They are so against the word of even their father, who was not righteous, but gave them a righteous command. They couldn't even follow the word, they wouldn't listen to the instruction of their earthly father. So how much so of them not listening to the words of their creator? And so I gave a whole bunch of scriptures about like giving birth to like wickedness. And so Psalm 7:14, whoever is pregnant with evil conceives trouble and gives birth to disillusionment or falsehood, deception, disappointment, a lie. All his kids are coming out worthless. All his kids are coming out are oath breakers. They're deceivers. Job 15:34, for the company of the godless will be barren, and fire will consume the tents of those who love bribes. They conceive trouble and give birth to evil. Their womb fashions deceit. And so, yes, Paris, when I was saying generational curse in a sense, Judah was acting. Yeah, Judah, we know Judah's story. Judah was acting in wickedness. Now, that same thing like we see with the sisters, Rachel and Leah, they were in contention when they were bearing these children. That spirit, those seeds of contention that were sown in their hearts was now sown into their kids, which is now why we see all these, behavioral patterns. It's repetitive. And we're seeing it still here in the same heart posture and seeds that were in Judah when he had impulsive marital relations with a woman he wasn't supposed to. It's just everything is in chaos and out of order. Because Judah's out of order, his whole entire house will be out of order. That's that. If the head, right? What's that scripture? Yeah, it's a scripture. If the head is sick, the whole body. Judah's supposed to be the head of his tribe. He's sick in the mind. He's sick in his heart. He's sick in his spirit. So he could only want sickness as a wife, then produces more sickness. And he's looking at his kids like, how y'all so wicked? He's not even doing introspective work on, am I being wicked? Are my actions wicked? He hadn't got to that point yet where he's sitting on his bed like Taryn was saying, at the end of their life, dang, I was really doing something. But in the moment, he was void of that understanding.
But are they just like Jacob is tired? Like maybe he felt like his biggest battle was, reconciling with his brother. He's tired. He's not stewarding his children. He's not lining that up. But I feel like as a parent, I got 3 girls and I'm quick to tell them, come here, let me look at you. You can't wear that. I done been there, done that. Like, I feel like some of the stuff I used to slip and tip and do, I'm definitely more attentive to what I think they might get into, and I remember some of the wisdom nuggets, like my grandmother was like, don't be bending over no car, don't be doing this, make him come to the door, and I share those tools or whatever with the kids, but it's like they're just so comfortable. Nobody, like, do you think that Yah has smiled on you so much that you just kind of really just get to be loose, like just kind of like, I'm not talking about like loose in the perverted way, but just like you're not on top of your, you're not scared. Like that's the whole thing. You're not walking like you should be doing,
Sis, can I add to that? Because you just said a couple of things in relation to mother. Um, and that's one of the things that I don't know if I can't remember if it was Tanya or someone else who brought it out last week or so, or maybe Samaria, in regards to the contention that the mothers had. Now we know like children grow up with daddy issues sometimes, right? It's even worse when a child grows up with mother issues. And with those mothers and their hearts and the way that they were treating each other, and even some of the maid servants, I know that they had to honor the wives, but that contention spilled over into all of them. And you know, we know some of the stories about some of these brothers, like some other backstories about some of these brothers and what the mothers actually did and the kind of seeds that they were pouring into their children, right? So typically if you have a mother, mothers are normally nurturing and they're like loving and hey, go talk to your brother, go hug your brother. It's not like go get him, go take this from your brother and go do. And do you know what that kind of like seed that plants into any, I mean it just what did they say, someone put in the notes that said behavioral, what was it, sorry I had saw it
Yeah,
earlier come
behavioral
up,
patterns. Yeah.
behavioral patterns, right? I mean, they're all formed, you know, based off of how much love we have or how much love we don't have, you know. And praise Yah, many of us are able to overcome it through Yah's love. But without that, you know, you're just going to be at a loss, so to speak. And it's going to be a lot of greed and a lot of I want, I'm never satisfied. And no matter really who your father is.
Mm.
Okay,
Um,
I gotta go. My baby just heard my voice. I'm just
wait,
got a little.
wait,
All
sis,
right, y'all.
before you go, wait, real fast. Because
No, I'm not
you,
going anywhere. I just got to go back to mute.
okay, you just spoke my entire childhood. That was the dynamic of my mother and mine. Exactly what you just said. And a lot of people don't speak on that. It's always the fathers, the dads, the deadbeat dads, you know, in regards to that. And not realizing how much damage it can do to someone when there is that hurt from a mother, because we as mothers are that nurturing, you know, and that role right there, it bleeds into so much that um it goes, you know, because it's like an automatic thing. It's like we've been programmed to think that automatically all mothers are just nurturing, loving mothers. And your exact words, the way you just exactly what you just said in regards to a mother, you would think a mother would teach their child to love on their siblings and embrace their siblings. And for myself, it was the complete opposite. My mother came to divide me from my brother, and it was due because of it was a spirit of jealousy that she had between me and my brother's relationship. And I love my brother, you know, we're 15 months apart and I'm older, and I always found myself very nurturing and protective over him. And even to this day, she's passed now, but um, I realized the damage that it did between my brother and I's relationship, because she bridged that gap. She tried to bridge that gap because the Most High is going to bring that together, and he's doing it little by little. But the wedge that she put between the two of us and the division that she was trying to set before us, it was generational. And the fact that we're even talking about this today, I need you guys to understand the warfare that's taking place in my life right now, but also the revelation that the Most High has brought to me on this day, because my mother's mother had a major heart attack today. No, she had it a couple days ago, but she's in ICU. And it was her and I alone in the room. And she told me, she said, Dominique, she said, I got to tell you something. And I said, what is it? You know, she's like, you know, I tried with my children to be a mother to them. And I know that your mother, she didn't do the right thing by you. And I said, you know, I know well, and I said, but I know where it comes from. And she says, but do you? She says, because my mother did me that way. And my mother tried to bridge a gap between me and my children. And that's exactly what my mother tried to do with me and my children. But the Most High didn't allow it to last as long as it lasted with how my grandmother's mother did it with her. And so when you start to realize the trauma that can come from a mother and how it really can destroy a family on another level of on a deeper level, um, because the Most High created us to be something else. You know, so that was my breakthrough today. Hallelujah. Because I now know my grandmother wasn't what people thought she was. And when they spoke about her, I looked at her now like I look at myself when people speak about me, the way that my mother spoke about me, you know? So, and I told her today, I said, well, it stops here. I said, because I broke that. That curse has been broken. And me and my daughter, now we don't have that relationship. You know, I teach my children to love one another, to love each other, that, you know, your responsibility is to make sure that you pour into you know, your brothers and sisters. And if you guys ever need one another, that you guys are going to always, you know, be there for one another. So that, you know, I broke that. And now, all praise to Yah, I'm starting to get my brother back. And it's like, um, it it's been a long journey, you know. So I just want to, you definitely nailed it 100%. So I just wanted to share that with all of you.
Hallelujah, sis. And I had to come back to that really quick. She just came and laid herself on my chest. But um, thank you for sharing that because I mean, I guess I was speaking that just based upon a perspective, but also I guess my own experiences too, and the relationship I had with my mother, and how I had a father who was wonderful, right? But my mother, like, she just mistreated me. She, told me, when I was a kid, like, I had legs like baseball bats and she was gonna beat me up when I turned 13, and so it made me really, really, really hard coming up towards a lot of people, you know what I mean? Even though I was like still this loving sister over my sisters, because for whatever reason, y'all blessed me with great grandparents and stuff like that, to still be able to experience love, but it hurts so bad to experience that from a mother, and even still some of the things that she'll do when she's around is, and I still have to like look at Yah and say, thank you, Father, for who you've made me be. But at the same time, I have to take little shots, her rolling her eyes and making side comments because of the way I am even with my daughter, and just the love we have in our home. So, sis, I just thank you for sharing that because it was strengthening, but at the same time, just heartbreaking hearing that. I mean, for us to go through it and just to hear other people, it's like, okay, we're healed, but just to hear someone else had the experience, and I think Gina said something about it too there. And it's just like, wow, like despite you feeling like you've gone through it, to hear it from somebody else is just heartbreaking just to know. But that is, a mother's love is definitely um, going to transpire the relationships and either grow or dismantle relationships until Yah intervenes, and we know the stories of most of the brothers that ultimately Yah did intervene, right? So anyway, thank you, sis.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hallelujah. I'm so grateful that you guys are sharing this because we're going to talk about the evil sowing of discord of the mom. We're gonna get to that a little bit later, but to understand like the power, the influence of a woman, like, and it's either going to be used for good or for bad. You're either going to wield it in righteousness or in wickedness. Proverbs talks about this all the time. Like either you're going to be a Proverbs 31 woman or you're one of those Proverbs 7 and 8 women, which is the complete opposite. It talks about a woman can tear down her whole entire husband's house. And we're seeing this picture, we're literally seeing these Proverbs play out in the story of Judah and Tamar. And for us, as we're going through this tonight, I'm praying that everyone is, meditating on this and reflecting on how Yah has covered you, even in the midst of a mother with wicked intentions towards her own children, and how Yah will come in, like Aisha said, Yah comes in, he intervenes. That grace, that favor of a loving father, of a loving grandparent, of a loving sibling. Even if your parents were wicked, it's like Yah fostered a love even between siblings in the midst of parents not displaying that nurturing, that comfort. Proverbs talks about, says, son, don't despise the instructions of your father are the wisdom of your mother. That's in a righteous setting. But imagine when you have a righteous father, but you have the wicked instruction of a mother, all it can do is go the opposite. All it can do is tear apart. And so we're seeing the importance and the intentionality of being one for ourselves as we move forward, equally yoked, and being so aware of how we operate so that we won't pour out our mess on our children. Or if we do see mess, that Yah allows us to reflect and see it so that he can walk with us as we clean it up. But yeah, I wanted, so yeah, that's definitely, it's like the womb is just like woman. I heard again, like we produce, like we expand upon what's given to us. And so, you know, we're seeing that here with Judah. Judah had seeds of him that were not clean, that weren't purified. He put it into a woman who wasn't clean and wasn't purified, and they just overproduced the wickedness that was already like sown in both of them. So I want to talk about how Judah took a wife for his first son, and her name was Tamar. And so they made it very clear to say that Tamar was not from the land of Canaan. So they wanted to show that like Judah took a wife from Canaan, but he did not repeat the error by taking a wife of Canaan for his sons. It's like he backtracked and was like, okay, I made a mistake. I know I wasn't supposed to marry this woman. Maybe after she didn't had all the kids and they had their first child, he was like, maybe it settled in after, like, was it what they call it? After the brick house effect faded away and she in his house now, he's like, oh snap, like this is a Canaanite woman. I'm not gonna, I'm gonna follow the commandment of my. If it wasn't for me, I'm gonna at least give a woman a right standing to my son. And in his heart, like he was trying to turn a corner, but not really, because we're gonna see. And so I wanted to point out that Tamar, I looked it up and said palm tree in Hebrew. And so for me, without even doing the word breakdown, I was just like, oh, let me think of Deborah. Deborah under the palm tree being a judge. Like that was just the first thing in my head. So when I broke down her name, I was like, okay, she is gonna be like a Deborah figure in this, but not what you would normally expect. And so breaking down her name, her name in Hebrew is Chet Mem Resh, which breaks down to separate and divide the chaos, the unclean, and the disorder from the head of the man. And I was just like, ain't that what Tamar did, huh? Because she literally comes into this situation full of chaos and disorder and wickedness. And Yah is going to use her to remove this dysfunction off of the head of the house of Judah. Because if it wasn't for this, their whole family line would have been like everybody just gone. Like wickedness would have just been overrun. And so I put like Tamar, we're going to see that she's going to be used as an instrument of judgment. Because however they acted towards her, it was like a sealing of their fate unto death. Like Yah was like, I'm showing you that you are moving in wickedness, and I'm swift to judge it in this. Like the way that y'all are moving, swift judgment, the way that y'all are treating this girl. Like I'm literally about to show you. And so that Yah does not take lightly the mistreatment, especially of someone who's supposed to be under your house, under your care. Go ahead, Sis Taryn. Oh, I thought you were gonna say something. Okay, I want to see the chat. It said, Pear said, this could be an example of Yah's permissible will, maybe. I believe it was his way of correcting them because they clearly weren't in his perfect will. So like they weren't in his perfect will, so it's definitely like in the permissible, like the way that Yah will come in and chasten you to correct you, to save your life. He put this young girl in their midst to be a reminder of chastisement and judgment. And it still was like they were seeing, okay, died, Onan died, and there was still no reflective of like, what's the problem? Like it never happened. There was no inquiring of Yah. I also want to hit on what something Taryn said, like, where was his dad? Remember in the beginning, it said that like Judah went down from his brethren. So he left his family. So Judah is literally not even amongst the camp of his family. He left and went down to where the Canaanites was and set up shop over there. So like he left where they was at, and then you made this. So he wasn't even, he had no like reminder of righteous authority and rule around him because he removed himself from it.
But no matter where he moved to, he had a jealous spirit, and so his children came out with jealous spirit. So whether he keep it a secret or he do half truths, because in his book he confesses some things, but he never renounced it. I guess like he can reflect and say, "Yeah, I kind of was thinking like that," but he never asked for forgiveness totally to root that thing up. So now the boys are dealing with jealousy too. So at the expense of their entire bloodline. Because if that's two sons down, right, they're not blessing the family, trying to get the house in order per se. But I still say, as a parent, you sit and you watch if your kids going astray a little, and stuff. And so, how do you course correct or, try to impart some wisdom on them some kind of way? Is it don't take a lot, but one or two people just telling you, oh, you might want a button or go sit down or something. You do hear it. You might not straighten up right then, but you start to do better somewhere.
Yeah. I think that's when like that title that Yah gives out, they were children of Belial, means it's just like they're not his. They're not going to receive correction. It's just you're talking to a brick wall. They're in this destruction. There's nothing you're gonna do to get around that. And I like that's a hard truth. But like when I look at it from the Hebraic picture of Judah left outside of the covered tabernacle place. He left the house. So
That's just like Dinah. That's what she did.
yes, that's
And
exactly
so that's why it makes me think of, that's why I put that scripture in there. Whatever that anointing, whatever that oil, whether it be righteous or unrighteous, whatever is on the head, it's gonna come down the beard and get onto the body. So that was in their lineage, that dysfunction or whatever, of going outside of what Yah had told him to do. And when you go outside of what Yah tells you to do, you're going to suffer the consequences for your actions. And that's what's happening. We're seeing the judgment on the family is coming out through the sons. It'll go down to the third and the fourth generations, So that's why it's very important. And that's why I think it really resonated to me, even with Leah and Rachel, what they were doing to one another while these kids were in the womb. That seed was planted in them in the womb, just like you guys are talking about with your moms and everything. It's no different. And we have to be very careful because the things that we do in our life affects other people. And a lot of times things that happen to us, it's not even for us, it's for somebody else, because people are saved by our testimonies, by the word of our testimony, And so we have to be very, very careful because we're out here causing our children to stumble, and we have a knife piercing into the wounds that are already in them that are not healed, those raw places. And we have to be extremely careful because he's watching and he's documenting, and we're going to be judged. We're going to be judged for all this foolishness and nonsense that we're doing because we're out here just, it's me, myself, and I, and thinking, we're not affecting anybody else. But Yah he's keeping notes.
Yeah. He is. Go ahead, sis. Go ahead, Amari.
Hey y'all. I feel like that mom that you just said really resonated because just a little quick synopsis. I had a really hard day yesterday at work, and I reminded myself quickly of scripture, like Yah says, we can get angry but sin not. And just as far as everything that you were just saying, like as far as kind of, I guess, what is it? What did they say? Like watching you don't want to lose your what is it?
Your witness.
Your witness, yes. I didn't like losing your witness. And so with some of my coworkers, it just, like I said, I had a really hard day yesterday and I got angry, and I just quickly knew that I needed to, like come before y'all because I didn't want to act out of, my flesh, but I know that I was rightly angry. And quickly, like I, talked to my mom, like prayed about it and everything. And then today, and just like, I don't know, like it's of course, like not even of course, but like truthfully, right after we prayed and like I kind of like said all I had to say and I wrote it down, and like kind of talked through it. I was like, not trying to like lose my witness in the situation. I feel like had I have, acted like out of anger, the people that I'm interacting with, even at my job, you know, like those are my witnesses as well. And I can see very, very clearly that the place that I work at, you know, it's a broken place. And like there's, you know, saving that needs to go across the board and not just necessarily like, you know, I know right now we're talking about lineage and about like our family, but I'm like, this is, I guess like my family at work, you know, and like these are Abba's children as well. And like, I don't know, like it's like, oh my gosh, like I can't even really stay mad for too long because even in me, you know, in my flesh, like I'm like, oh my gosh, like this isn't fair, this isn't right. But he like, I understand, but still, you know, and I'm like, oh my gosh, God, like I can't allow myself to stay in that because like you said, we could be twisting the knife and in their wounds that they already have that have nothing even to do with me. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like, okay, but that was just my little spill because I'm like, good gracious, I feel like just with everything yesterday and today. Today was a much better day, praise y'all. But I think it just everything just came, you know, kind of full circle just then. And it's just I feel like emphasized why it's so important to not, you know, lose your witness and to be careful about, you know, how we handle situations and stuff like that.
Amara, you so grown up. That just make me smile. But just think about even what you're dealing with at work, the same thing that who was it just said Aisha was saying. I mean, like her heart was so pure that that relationship with her between her and her children didn't come from that. So it's still a testament. You posture yourself right, you know, and you deal with y'all right, and you have a desire to do right. Then you know that's your walk, that's your testimony. I mean, right now it might seem like a struggle because you're saying yes, they offended and they were wrong, but at the same time, you know, like that's not what you want to represent.
Right.
And you know, the whole world is looking for anything to say, as much as they preaching about they God and much as they doing this and
Mhm.
that, and look how you don't have self-control. Or we were
Right.
talking about that last week, and I think your mom had posted the fruits of the spirit. But you know,
Mhm.
for us to just sit in that a little bit and understand that they don't get the luxury of coming to provoke us like that. And this
Right.
is coming from somebody who daily has to, you know, still try to remember that. But there's pureness out there. I mean, we're hearing it from testimony from different things, but I think what's hitting everybody is that we're fighting for relationships everywhere, you
Yes.
know. And again, even with the mothers for their lack of stewardship or how they're making contention, you know, because their personal relationship with their spouse is not whole,
Mhm.
or you know, something else. They're coveting like watching love for their kids, like if their kids do like their siblings, and you know that whole dynamic, and trying to control that and stuff. And when we get in a space like that, that's like a little bit of witchcraft too, because we're trying to bend other people to our will. And
Mhm.
you know, for most of the children, they don't know any better, they're just doing what mom and them say. And then when
Mhm.
we grow up as adults, we reflect back to like, oh, that might not have been right, you
Mhm.
know. But hopefully, you know, they continue to love and they can work through that, you know, sibling wise or with any relationship.
Yeah. And I think it just hits me so hard because for y'all that don't know, I work in childcare and I'm like I just see these babies, you know, and covering these babies and we are, you know, the adults there and you know, we're supposed to be stewarding over them and I feel like it just starts with us. Just the same way like with parents, you know, it starts there that trickle down effect. I can see it. I feel like in the spiritual and they're kind of looking at in the natural. And I'm like, it's so deeper, so much deeper than how they're, you know, looking at it. So I'm like, y'all quickly snatch me up and up out of my anger to, you know, kind of reveal to me like it's so much more than, you know, one little hiccup. But yeah.
And childcare is definitely, you know, I work in childcare too, sis. Um,
Yeah.
childcare is definitely a mirror. I think any occupation, anything that you do that involves children will really get to show you the level of patience that Yah has. And how he says, come to me like a child, and how like we have to be the ones that exemplify the reflection of Yahuwah and how he would deal with a little child who doesn't know any better, and how he deals with us in our ignorance. Um, and so it keeps talking about like, and they did wickedness. It's all like, what was their wickedness? But we know that the word wicked or evil really just means dysfunctional, bad, disagreeable. But when y'all kept talking about like the hurt that parents do, the root word of the word wicked is to do injury or hurt. And so like a lot of times like, oh yeah, my mother hurt me, but like there was a seed, there was a sliver, there was a root of wickedness. Again, we talked about y'all purging our hearts so we don't transfer this wickedness to our children. Like I know wicked is such a strong, harsh word, but in the eyes of Yah, that's what it is. When we do injury or hurt to somebody because of our misalignment to what Yah has called us to do, we produce wickedness. And that again falls over on other people. And so it says in Judah's firstborn was wicked in the sight of Yah, and Yah slew him. And he also said that he knew that the seed wouldn't be his. Onan knew that the seed wouldn't be his. And so we read all of that. But basically this concept of do the right of the brother-in-law, you can see it in Deuteronomy 25:5. I put it there. So for y'all who don't know, this is a practice that was already done in this area, in the Near East. So it's like if your brothers live together and one dies without a son, the widow must not marry outside the family. Her husband's brother shall take her and marry her and fulfill the duty of brother-in-law to her. And the first son she bears shall carry the name of the dead brother, so that his name will not be blotted out from Israel. Another example of this is something that happens. It's something that happened in the story of Ruth and Naomi. A lot of people like to call this a love story, when really it's Naomi understood Torah, she understood the law, and she knew what was hers by right. And so when they found out that Boaz was a kin, Boaz had the duty to bring seed for Naomi's dead sons or husband. That line was about to be blotted out. All the men had died. So the next of kin was Boaz. So him giving the seed to Ruth, but that child was Naomi's. So we're seeing like that is what happened in that story. So I think it's so beautiful when we understand Torah now, we can see the law in place to cover women who would normally be in an uncovered place. So this was supposed to be a way to cover the women. If, the sons died out, if the husband died, if the sons died, there was a way to still cover her within the guise of being in Israel, in the covered place. Everyone's supposed to be covered in the house of Yah. I want to read some of the Testament of Judah so we can kind of get a little more insight on the deep level of the wickedness that his sons did. And so in the Testament of Judah, it says, on the third night after the wedding, an angel of Yahuwah smote for he had not known her according to the evil craftiness of his mother. For he did not wish to have children by her. So in the days of the wedding feast, he gave Onan to her in marriage. And he also did wickedness, and he knew her not. Because even though he spent a whole year with her, he never slept with her. And so when Judah found this out, he said, I threatened him. So when I threatened him, he finally had sex with her, but he had sex with her and he pulled out and spilled his semen on the ground according to the command of his mother. So he also died in his wickedness. And so it wasn't just that the first son didn't even touch her because his mom was like, nope, no, I know your daddy got it for you. It's a no for me. Like, don't do it. Never slept with her. Okay, Onan, he married her, but spent a whole year with her, didn't have sex with her. He was just like, I'm just not. And when my dad threatens me, when he's reprimanding me, I need to do this thing. I do it, but I have do it. So it was just like, he spilled the seed on the ground. Like the whole point of you sleeping with her was to give her seed. So not only him having sex with her didn't give her seed, but he basically used her for his own desire, not according to the commandment of his father. This was witchcraft. This is rebellion brought about by his mother's craftiness, her working of rebellion. And I want us to see the deep picture of this, for him to do this was a huge violation and disrespect to Tamar.
This is husband's son, because mama get to control him to that degree.
Yeah. Yeah. And it wasn't even that, it was this wasn't just this is a violent act towards Tamar, because she was still a virgin with she could have still been a virgin with Onan. If he would have been tell his dad, I can't do it. But he slept with her. He basically defiled her. He made her unclean, and she can no longer is fit to be married to someone. He took her virginity without giving her a child. So he put her in a space of being uncovered. And it's I'm trying to he basically sabotaged her life. He wanted to utterly ruin her. This action was a declaration that he was not going to secure her. He would not establish the continuation of his father's house, and that he wanted to waste or make void his father's house. What happened to Tamar, she was deeply abused. And then Judah had the nerve to send her away, which is not a righteous ruling from Judah.
She was defiled. It's the same thing. He defiled her. Yes. And so now go be with your dad. Go be with your family, just shoot her off after that. She was like, okay, I got something for you.
It said, Judah then said to his daughter-in-law, Tamar, live as a widow with your father's house until my son Selah grow up, for he thought he may die too, just like his brothers. So Tamar went to live in her father's household. And it wasn't that he might die. Judah knew he gonna die. Mm-hmm. Because this girl, this woman, this pillar of reminder of your wickedness is gonna take out every single one of your children because of their wickedness, and you have no control over your house. Literally a city without wall. You are in complete ruin. That is the picture of Judah's life. That is Proverbs in action. And so, yeah, he humbled her. He afflicted her. He made her low. He put her, it was such a, can you imagine? Can you really imagine just okay, finally, I'm about to get what's due to me. My dad paid the dowry fee. I'm married to the one son. He died. He didn't want to sleep with me. The other one, he finally sleeping with me. I'm about to get the seed. And in the midst of him sleeping with you, he spills this, the whole reason why he even has to sleep with you. It's that's the type of rape. And he left her.
I was gonna say this was a violation. This was a violation. Yeah,
a deep violation. And then for Judah to know that and send her back to her father, if she got married, they would see her as a whore anyway, because she already had sex. And it was just there's no righteous ruling here. So the Tamar, her name literally being the one that's going to make a separation and remove the chaos from the top of the head, who's going to be acting as a judge. This whole situation of how they use Tamar is judgment upon the house of Judah. But Judah still did not see that. And so I put in here the evil craftiness of his mother. I was ooh, the Jezebel spirit. In the Canaanite woman, way before Jezebel even on the scene. Okay, this woman probably Jezebel, great grandma, something connected. They in the same family line. But the way that Judah's wife is moving is the exact same way in how Jezebel had leadership over Ahaz. We could really call Judah the Ahaz before Ahaz even came on the scene, because was Ahaz line of Judah, or was he a king of Israel? I think he was the king of Israel, of one of the Israelite tribes, but not Judah. But again, this same order, this disorder where Jezebel's here and King Ahaz is just he can't do nothing against his wife, is what we're seeing with Judah. It's even though Judah was a strong, powerful man going around killing nations and had all this strength from Yah, he was a man of weakness. He had no authority in his own house concerning his own children. So I put on here the influence of a woman that's contrary to Yah can destroy the entirety of the seed, the family, the offspring. And it made me think of the scripture, I will put hostility between you and the woman, between your offspring and her offspring. So it brought me right back to Genesis, the corruption of the children and the dismantling of the father's commandments. That is what Hashatan aims to do. And so if he can get the woman, he can destroy the entirety of the seed. The corruption has happened. The corruption is in her womb, and now the corruption is in her kids. Hashatan wanted to corrupt Eve, and then the corruption of Eve, she was able to help corrupt Adam, and then that produced this mixed seed within the production of humanity. And so again, Deuteronomy 7 is why Yah says, do not marry other nations. He's for they will turn your sons away from following me to serve other gods. So the anger of Yahuwah will be aroused against you and destroy you suddenly. Is that not what we're seeing with Judah and his sons? they being destroyed left and right. And so, I put those scriptures about hear the instructions of thy father, Proverbs 4, 1 through 4, Proverbs 5, 1 through 2, and then Proverbs 30. These are all Proverbs about heeding the instruction of the father and the wisdom or the Torah of your mother. When your mother moves righteously.
Yeah, but it has to be witchcraft because Judah's not even paying attention that it's messing with his bloodline. He's so like blind to doing whatever the wife wants or just letting her run amok that he doesn't understand that that's impacting his children's children, his entire bloodline.
It's like at one point, at what point does her movement to him be like, okay, I got to put you away? Like, like we don't know. We don't know all the details. We have a little bit of details. But I think she was just like with Esau's wives, Canaanite wives, they sorely grieved Rebecca and Isaac, like a deep grief because they were so contrary to everything that their house stood for and was established on.
That's why they weren't supposed to link up with them. That's what it all boils down to. They weren't supposed to be over there. They were given instruction not to go over there and mess with them Canaanite women because they are sons of Belial. They are operating, they not operating under the same ruach. And so they do these things that is so contrary to the way children of Abba work. And that's why the instruction was, don't go over there. But we kept tipping our toe. We see it with Dinah. Now we see them with them. We keep wanting what we're not supposed to have.
Y'all don't understand this study is no joke today. This has literally, okay, I've read this before, but this today, I have not grasped it to this level of understanding as I just have today with you all. That is exactly how my mother and my father's dynamic were in the home. And so to read this, it gives me, it's like filling in the pieces of where I just couldn't quite understand. So if somebody could help me better understand. So with Judah, okay, was it that he just, what I'm understanding is, did he just love her so much that he didn't want to be obedient to the word, that he pretty much like made her an idol? Would we say that would be?
I think it's blind spots, sis. I think it's maybe a mixture of all of it. Because when sex gets involved, people are like, he literally said in the impulse of his youth, he was blinded. Like he knew better, he just didn't care. So it's like the blind spot of, I know this isn't good for me. I know my father told me not to marry this woman, but because he was already walking in error, he could not see the gravity of another person that's in deeper error, in deeper contentment to the word of Yah than even himself. And so when they got together, it multiplied. And then even still in his day's state of his heart, he still has done no reflective heart work. He still has never been to the Father's feet. He's never asked for forgiveness. He's not even thinking about what's going on with Joseph. He already got the money for Joseph and bounced. Like his conscience is seared. So what can be produced from a seared conscience? What can be produced from a seared conscience when you marry someone with no alignment, no concern to righteousness? And so I think all of it, like the spirits of error are just mounting on top of Judah, and they're literally leading all of his instruction. He has another authority in his heart, not the authority of Yah. Teeb said it something again like the reins of your heart. Yah's not at the reins of Judah's heart. Yah's not the enemy is at the reins of Judah's heart in this point of his life. And so the sex involved, the marriage involved, the kids involved, the mixing of the seed, like you done swap fluids and spirits are now connected. It's a lot going on here. All of this is void of Yah. All of it. And it's just like heaping sin upon sin. And so maybe he did see that, like, okay, my children are not listening. But I don't, because he's such in a state of blindness, he does not fathom the severity of all of his actions and his children's actions or his wife's actions. So that's why I say it's just blind spots.
And
He
it's
has-
cutting his bloodline off. Like, that's the thing. Even if he's agreeing to the point of just make her happy, the other kids aren't reproducing anyway because of all the shenanigans they're doing. So it's kind of, I mean, it's not crazy, but the enemy, without directly saying, I don't want you to reproduce, it's coming to do it by way of he packaging it up a little bit different to say it's about, well, that ain't the girl I picked. They're making me go over there. So that's why I didn't want to have a baby with her. You know, that contention or confusion to spin it differently.
You know, something I saw too, sis Taryn, was that in the sense of like just worldly looking at it, oh snap, Judah's wife had 3 sons. Like, she secured the house. If we're just looking
Yeah,
at
that's a big,
like
yeah.
producing seed, the deception of just because, like, I think it's the Proverbs, a man that has like many sons means nothing if they're disobedient. It's like they're just like, you just like your whole house is spoiled. You got all these kids, but they all wicked. So all that fruitfulness, the fruit is going in the trash. Like, you thought you was fruitful, but you really not. It's the deception. It looks like she's fruitful. She done had 3 sons. They ain't have to worry. They ain't have to go and inquire if y'all want her womb shut up. All these other righteous women, their wombs were shut up. They had a hard time conceiving.
And they tarried and cried out to God to conceive and then handed, like, that's like an example of how the enemy released that person on assignment. Like, soon as you born to come steal, you know what God had promised for you. And then in that case, that's 3 different chances that Judah is getting to see you still got time to get your house right. You still got time to get your house right, but he over there with the cookies. He ain't thinking about getting the house right. You know, and he's by himself without the covering. So he doesn't have his home fellowship either.
Like, I think it's just like he met a man like the what did it say? The Adulamite. So basically he became friends with this Canaanite person, right, who then brought him around nothing but Canaanite women. Like, what? Judah, what's going on? Like, we know what's going on, but
he was over there where he wasn't supposed to be.
Just like Dinah, you was over there scoping out the Canaanites, and now you done married a Canaan. It's just like, what do we expect?
Exactly.
What's the next part I was about to read?
I had a question.
Go ahead, sis.
I just maybe I might be thinking too hard on this. So y'all pour into me. As far as like my understanding is like I understand the fact that like they're having children and they're not supposed to be with these like intermixing. However, but like I don't know, like I feel like I've always grown up to understand that children were a blessing from Yah. And so I understand that, you know, these children, I guess maybe weren't supposed to be here. Like, I don't know, where am I like missing the mark, I guess, on this?
We kind of covered this a couple chapters ago about blessing is only, you can only be blessed when you're obedient to Yah. If you're producing anything outside of what is obedient to Yah, it's not considered blessed in Yah's eyes. And so so people are successful, you know, look at like a rich successful person, but they have a very vulgar life. You may look at them like, oh wow, they're blessed, like they're doing all these things, but like all of their blessings came outside of covenant. All of their blessings came with them being rebellious to what Yah told them to do. You may find joy in the things that you produce outside of covenant, but that does not mean that your joy is rooted in righteousness. And so I think when we look about it with kids, especially with this situation, Judah is already out of covenant. These children are not blessed. These children have no desire to seek Yah. And so specifically concerning this situation. But yeah, so I think understanding what blessed, to be blessed by Yah, what that actually means, because you can be blessed by all kind of other spirits. But when we're talking about being blessed by the Most High and what it looks like to be fruitful and to multiply and to continue on righteous order, that is blessed.
True, but they also had opportunity for redemption. They still had, you know, a fork in the road. They could have went left or right. So when they chose to be disobedient, you know, if we're talking about the child that stands in there innocent, right? Like even though there is some cloud following them from the parent sins, that still y'all can decide, you know, but you blatantly decided that I don't want to do that, which was y'all's way. So now you sealed your destiny, you know. So you still had an opportunity for redemption for that.
Yeah, that's good. I think if Onan would have actually was obedient and started walking in obedience, the children produced with Tamar would have been a blessing, because we know that she was a righteous bride. She was doing what she was supposed to do, and she would have been the nurturing mother. Just us using sanctified imagination to raise those children up in the standards of the house of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But we don't know that because again, they chose to stay in wickedness. They chose to go their own way, and so they decided to not want to receive the blessing of the wife. Like it says, what's the Proverbs about? Like a wife is far beyond rubies and whatnot. They didn't see her as a blessing. They didn't see her as a gift. They didn't see her as something that Yah was trying to give them to help correct, to help, fix or rectify this trail of errors that was going on in this house. I wanted to break down the word spill seed. And so, because, we talked about this a little bit, but like him doing that, we already talked about the violation, but spilling the seed is literally like the word spill is like, it breaks down to pervert, to corrupt, to ruin. And so, but we know that the word seed is to be the security and the continuation of life. Put those two words together. Basically, he's deciding, I'm going to pervert, corrupt, and ruin the security and the continuation of life. So is that not what the enemy does? To steal, kill, and to destroy? So that's why I was like, these are sons of Belial. But yeah, it was, yeah. Whew, woo. Okay, again, about the mixing seed, I put Deuteronomy 22:9 in here, where Yah's literally telling them about planting seeds, but we also know this is a principle also about maintaining separation and purity. So you shall not sow do not sow your vineyard with different kinds of seeds, if they yield the seed that you have sown and the fruits of the vineyard be defiled. And so on a broader principle, basically, that's why they were like, don't marry the Canaanites, because you need to maintain the integrity, the purity of this covenant of the house of what Yah has established. You have to be kept separate, but they kept wanting to mix. They wanted to keep mingling. So the seed that was produced was defiled, and I also put on, we can kind of speculate this all throughout scripture. We mentioned Ahaz and what's her girl name? Jezebel. And I started looking at, like, we talked about mothers, the influence of a mother. And so Kings and Chronicles, you keep seeing like there was a righteous king, but then the son is wicked. And we're like, what's going on? And so what was the heart or the spirit of the wives of these righteous kings? We know that Judah was far from, moving in righteousness. He wasn't walking in the commands of Yah. But when we look at Judges when we look at Kings and Chronicles, sometimes they mention the mother and they give us like her birth or where she stemmed from. Like, oh, this mother was from the tribe of Judah and her son was righteous. But we're just like, okay, Yah gave credit. He named this woman so we could see. And then when they named a woman who was wicked and produced a wicked son, we saw that she was most likely connected to a house that wasn't Yah's established house. And so Yah, even in the Chronicles of listing the righteous king, the wicked kings, and then sometimes mentioning their mothers, is a telltale sign of the woman's influence. And so, but yeah, Judah's wife, she had no desire or intention to surrender to the head of her house. She had no desire to surrender to Judah. Her goal was literally to turn her children into the image of her fathers, in the image of her people, not the image of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But she was producing sons. She was producing men that were going to be Canaanites, not Israelites. And
That's a
so
really good point, Samaria, where you're talking about how they point out the mothers. Because I remember reading through that when they talk about all the kings, they mention the moms, who the mother was. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. Because a lot of times women didn't get a lot of, accolades or recognition or anything like that. So that's really good. I think we need to foot stomp that and pay attention to that. They did recognize the mothers and um whatever influence they had over the sons or whatever. That scripture that you were looking for, where did I find it? It's a wife of noble character can who can find. She is worth more than rubies. Her husband is full of confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She finds him good, not harm, all the days of her life.
what's that, Proverbs? Is that Proverbs, Akoti? You on mute if you're talking. Hello?
Yes, Proverbs 31. Sorry, I didn't know I was muted.
Proverbs 31. Okay. It came all crazy. Okay, I'm just gonna add it in there later. But yeah, so what was I saying? Okay, yeah. So he told her to, be a widow or remain in her father's house. We talked about, not dealing righteously in that sense. And so I'm going to pick up at verse 11. I'm going to read 11 one more time. And then Judah said to his daughter-in-law, live as a widow and go to your father's house until my son Selah grows up, for he thought he would die too. So Tamar went to live in her father's household. In my culture context Bible, it talks about Judah, he still has the authority over Tamar. So the fact that he's even telling her, like, she can't say no because he is the head of house. He is the head of her life in this situation because she has no husband, but he's still her father-in-law regardless. And so it says that like Judah here relegates Tamar to the protection of her father's household. And they said this is unusual in that because the dowry had already been paid by her father, which is supposed to be the purpose of supporting her in a situation like this, it is unlikely that her father would have had any legal obligation to support her. And it was just like, this was a very out of the norm for Judah to even send her away. Like, this is not proper custom. This is not in the culture, in the context of this situation, this is not supposed to happen. And so when I read that, I was like, see, I mean, I was already speculating like he did wrong, but like now that I got some culture context in there, like it's just solidified for me. And okay, hold on. I don't know why I put it down, started talking. And after a long time, Judah's wife, the daughter of Shua, died. When Judah had recovered from his grief, he went up to Timnah to the men who were shearing his sheep. And his friend Harar, the Adulamite, went with him. He's still hanging out with this Canaanite man. This is still his best friend. This is his best friend. When Tamar was told, your father-in-law is on his way to Timnah to shear his sheep, she took off her widow's clothes, covered herself with a veil, and disguised herself. And she sat down at the entrance of Enma, which is on the road of Timnah. For she saw that Selah had now grown up. She had not been given to him as a wife. So Judah the liar, Judah the covenant breaker. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face, not realizing that this was his daughter-in-law. He went over to her by the roadside and said, come now, let me sleep with you. And she said, what will you give me to sleep with you? We talked about this with the Dinah story. Like, at least prostitutes get their money up front. Dinah was just like, I'll sleep with you first, and then like, give me the prospect of marriage. And he said, I'll send you a young goat from my flock. And then she said, will you give me something as a pledge until you send it? And he said, what pledge should I give you? Your seal and your cord and the staff in your hand, she answered. So he gave them to her and slept with her, and she became pregnant by him. After she left, she took off her veil and put on her widow clothes again. Drama. Okay. So in all of this, so one, she hears that Judah's coming down. Then she sees that Selah is grown. And she's like, oh, this man that sent me to my daddy's house said, wait till Selah's grown. Why can't I wait till Selah was grown in your house? Like, why do I have to go back to my daddy's house to wait for that? I see that he's grown. You out here just willy-nilly living life. And then I was reading the Culture Context Bible. The time of shearing sheep, a lot of the men will go out to go to get their sheep sheared. Was during that time was a high influx of prostitution and fornication, because all the men were gone from their houses. They was in another city doing business. But then they got caught up in illicit things. And so she was just standing there with a veil over her head. He came up to her. Judah was looking to get down. Okay? He found what he was looking for. And now on the Culture Context Bible, it also talks about like her putting a veil on her head does not equal a prostitute, because most of the time prostitutes are actually uncovered. And so like basically they're saying she really just did this to hide her face. It wasn't like she was trying to look like a prostitute, but the fact that she took off her widow clothes and covered her face would be weird for a prostitute, because normally prostitutes are brazen. They're like, look at me, you know, but she was like reserved, got the veil on, just standing by the side of the road, which prostitutes do. So she did like half of what a prostitute did without doing the fullness of what a prostitute does. And she knew Judah's predilections probably. So she was like, all right, I'm about to catch him. Side note, in the Testament of Judah, he gives us a little more insight about this whole thing. So it's not just she saw that Selah was grown and he didn't give them to her. It was Judah said, I wish to give Selah also to her, but his mother did not permit it, because Tamar was not a daughter of Canaan as she was herself. And while I was away, she went and took for Selah a wife from Canaan. And when I knew what she had done, I cursed her in my anguish of my soul, and she died through her wickedness together with her sons. And so it wasn't that she was just like, no, don't marry her. She went behind her husband's back and went and got a Canaanite woman for his son, knowing that this son was promised to Tamar. And so when we talk about like deceit on top of deceit, getting a little more insight about what was going on behind the scenes, it wasn't just that he forgot. It was that he now couldn't even give her to Tamar, even if he wanted to, because his wife made sure that it didn't happen.
Boo, he whining. Because once he sent that girl from up under his covering, he wouldn't have had no. So he wasn't running his wife. He only telling that story like that because he grieving that she's gone. Because he say nothing else about it the whole time she was here. So even if she did it behind his back, he still knew when his son was going to be of age or something, or he knew she never agreed to it. So he wasn't going to be able to be a man's man and put his foot down and diss the law and whatever else the case is. But he got that story. That sounds just like something he's sitting around the fire pit telling his buddies too. That's how he wanted to remain. Because again, no accountability, because he was responsible for covering her, but he sent her away. So ain't that the dirt? I mean, even when you go back with Abraham, you split the tip, and then now you're going to send her away. And everybody gonna send the person away after they did their little, you know, it's her fault. But boo. Go ahead, Gina. You be taking up for the man. Gina be like, let me just see the other perspective. But I'm like, no, excuse maker. Because he wasn't the person who was dominant in that. She was running him anyway. So now he trying to twist the story a little bit to be like, I really did want her to, but how? You didn't even send for nobody to let her know that then.
But Ms. Rachel said he was absolutely complicit. Yes. And I was like, he really was. I think I put on the notes and just like, they were passing blame. So like everybody passed blame on Tamar. Like she was blameless, but they blamed her and everything. Like there was no fault with her. She was a suitable bride. Her righteousness was against everything that Judah and his wife stood for. And just her existing around their wickedness brought condemnation and judgment to everybody who worked injustice and cruelty on her. Instead of Judah looking around at all the evil in his home and the reward of his son's wickedness as a means to uproot and swiftly correct it, he sent the reminder of his wickedness, of the wickedness of his son and his wives away. He was like, I'm gonna get her out of sight, out of mind, and we're gonna be back in business. We'll be fine. Because he said he might die too, knowing that he would, because his sons were corrupt, their mother was corrupt, and the judgment was soon gonna fall on his last child. And he was trying to find a way to prevent that. But that, like, you missed the whole purpose of Yah sending in the correction and the chastisement. You still, it's kind of like how we were when our sin, like someone would come up and try to be like, hey, you shouldn't be doing this. Like, yeah. I'm just not gonna listen to you anymore, and I'm gonna make an excuse to continue doing it the way that I've been doing it. Judah was just trying to get back to regular scheduled programming in his dysfunctional life. So he was like you said, complicitly, I'm putting her away. We ain't gotta deal with her no more. It's fine. Like it was very.
But he likes to be blinded by lust. I mean, ain't that something? Because she still had to be somewhat of a brick house too to be picked up on the side. She didn't cover the little face and wasn't even looking him in the eye. And he said, I want some. He out there still like, and I just imagine for her that she didn't say all those years, again, you didn't send me back to my father, whoever, I'm not being taken care of. So she devised a good plan. And now you done got a dose of that boomerang, whatever. And how do you explain that? And I mean, for real, you just, yeah, I want some. Just like that. I met her and I mean, I'm like,
don't know her from 2 cents. Like, just
no, but you're supposed to be grieving your kids. You're supposed to be grieving your spouse. And I mean, I know they might have all went out because everybody else doing it, but just straight one night stand, whatever, something, man. I'll send you a sheep or what else you want. Like, just this, what else? That's what got him in trouble the first time. Like, you ain't learned, you have not learned. He hasn't matured at all.
And I'm glad you said that too, because literally verse 15 says, and Judah saw her just like he saw this Canaanite woman and just acted on his impulse. Like, again, we kept saying like this whole time, ever since, the evil plot against Joseph, there has been no heart check. When I tell you, just walking in blind error with no concern, like, again, no growth, no reflection. But this moment that we're about to see is that reality check. Oh, you're going to have to reflect. You're going to have to look at yourself now. And that's the judgment. That's the correction that we're going to see that plays out through Tamar, which is so beautiful that her name literally means like to separate the chaos from the head, because he got so much chaos going on. Tamar got to come. The way that it happened, that way that Yah allowed it to happen, was Tamar was such a bold yelling, like, this is for you. Like, this judgment is on you. And so, I want to break down the word harlot because, let me keep reading because it talks.
They didn't embrace the correction.
Right.
They needed to embrace the correction and they didn't. They kept bucking up against it. So,
and that's what, so the first time Tamar was there, it was supposed to be for them to see the correction and get in line with the correction. They sent her away. And then the second time she comes back, it's like, you can't buck back against this time. Like, y'all's like, you are gonna be corrected. And I think it's like the difference between either you willingly do the correction yourself in private quarters in your house.
That's his mercy.
Or it's gonna happen to you publicly to where it shames you, to where you're gonna be forced to be corrected in the sight of everybody.
Because he doesn't desire for us to perish, so he gives us that way of escape. And they didn't embrace the correction. Okay, own it. And, accept your correction and move on. They didn't. They stayed basically in rebellion,
And it just shows too the mercy that he gives us.
Hallelujah.
I'm talking about like mercy. Okay, like I even look back on my own life. I'd be like, Father, the mercy, So it's just like, just thinking about them in that time span where he had the ability to go ahead and, like you said, hold himself accountable, but he still was like, no, I'm gonna keep, it was like a double slap, so yeah.
So So meanwhile, verse 20, meanwhile, Judah sent the young goat by his friend the Adulamite in order to get his pledge back from the woman, but he did not find her. He asked the man who lived there, "Where is the shrine prostitute who was beside the road at Enmain?" I may be saying that wrong. Sorry, guys. They were like, "There hasn't been a shrine prostitute here," they said. So he went back to Judah and said, "I did not find her. Besides, the men who live there said there hasn't been any shrine prostitute here." So Judah said, "Let her keep what she has, or we will become ashamed. After all, I did send this young goat, but you didn't find her." About 3 months later, Judah was told, "Your daughter-in-law Tamar is guilty of prostitution. As a result, she is now pregnant." Judah said, "Bring her out and have her burned to death." The audacity. But I want to stop there because I want to break down the two words harlot. We talked about this a little bit in the chat. So when Judah saw her initially in verse 21, in verse 15, it said Judah saw her and thought her to be a harlot or a zina. So that word harlot is different than when his friend went. Again, remember now, the Canaanite, the one who was used to so much defilement and idolatry and wickedness, he thought her to be, I don't even know how to pronounce this, Cadiz, another type of harlot, but which was a temple prostitute, which was known to be very loose and just like, so basically, if a woman was a shrine prostitute for one of the female goddesses, they had uncontrollable, they had no restraint on their sexuality. So they could just do whatever. But when Judah saw her, he just thought, okay, this is a woman who is unfaithful. She's a fornicator, whether she's married or unmarried. She's just an adulteress. She just likes to have sex with other men and get paid for it. But she's not connected to the idolatry of a shrine prostitute who people come into this temple to have sex with her with sexual magic rites type of thing. Like she wasn't that. But so Judah didn't even think that she was that. But his Canaanite friend, because the Canaanite culture was full of that type of prostitution, when he was looking for a harlot, he was looking for a shrine prostitute. So I just wanted to say that to think about like the different mindset of Judah the Israelite versus his Canaanite friend. The customs of Judah, like you shouldn't have no prostitutes at all. But it was even behoove of him that it would be a shrine prostitute because that's just a little too much in Judah's eyes. Like that's what I was thinking about, like just the differences of the point of view on why they both use the word harlot, but they're different words that mean something drastically different. And then so she said, "What pledge should I give you?" So we're going to break down. She asked for 3 things. Okay. She asked for the pledge. So the pledge is, I need the security. I need a condition of fulfillment, because obviously we know that Judah don't keep his word. So she knew that Judah has not kept his word. Now she has receipts for future interactions because she's anticipating there's going to be a future interaction and I'm going to need proof because this man is a liar. She's like, "You're not finna bamboozle me again." The seal. So the seal, like a ring, like, when you seal something, your name is stamped on, it confirms a thing. So she asked for receipts, a confirmation to lock up the promise of whatever he said to her is locked up. He cannot go against it like he's done before. The cord, which is where the seeing hangs on, normally goes around the neck. So imagine your promise, your word is attached by your neck, like it's attached to your neck. Either you're going to go and do what you said to do, or it's literally going to hang you. Again, we're seeing this picture of judgment being literally laid triple times over on Judah's head. So the pledge, the seal, the cord, and then the staff. Like, this is not just a judgment on Judah. This is a judgment on his headship, his leadership. This is going to be his chastening for his correction. That's what a staff does. A staff also gets the sheep back in line. It also will get popped by the staff for correction. Like, hey, he ain't supposed to be over there. He gave her the instrument that's supposed to be used for chastisement and correction. Judah put the symbol of his ruling influence, his correcting, his leadership, and his support of life for his tribe in her hands. Did we not just say Tamar's name is literally going to be that she's going to be a judge over the entirety of Judah's house? And when he gave her all these things, he was solidifying what Yah had already sent her to do in that house. So now it's triple times over. And now you put it in my hands. I just thought that was just beautiful. Like the poetry in it. And also to show out, like we said again, the blindness of Judah's sin, that he was so stupid to give a prostitute, he thought she was a prostitute, the symbols of your authority. You are literally the destruction of your own name. That's literally what Judah's like. He's just throwing away his whole line. He was about to eradicate the line of Judah. This is Yah saving for Judah. Like, my goodness. And so Judah puts in the testament of Judah, he has, as he's on his deathbed, he's giving his testament. He says, for even though a man be a king even though a man be a king, if he commits fornication, he is stripped of his kingship by becoming a slave of fornication. He's literally talking about himself. For I myself also suffered. For I gave my staff, that is the stay of my tribe, and my girdle, that is my power, and my diadem, that is the glory of my kingdom. He gave all that away to a prostitute because of fornication. The dismantlement of his entire kingdom. And then it goes further on. It says, and the angel of Elohim showed me that does every woman bear rule over kings and beggars alike when it comes to fornication. Not that women's rule, but when a man is a slave to fornication, woman can do all kinds of things to corrupt, manipulate, sow witchcraft, basically that manipulation. It said, from the king, it takes away his glory, and from a valiant man, his might, and from the beggar, even the little which he has of his poverty. So it made me think of, like, a king can be great, but if he gets, like, again, like Solomon, we're seeing his stories play out. King David, Solomon, all of his wives, all these different things that happen with all of these women, like, it caused the dismantlement of their kingdoms, of like their rulership. And then we have Samson, a valiant, strong man, but because of his predilections and fornications, she literally ripped his strength from him because he did not have self-control, because he was a slave to fornication. And it's just like over and over and over again, this spirit of fornication, it attacks in youth. It tries to get a hold of you and your kids very early on because it is such a destructive spirit. Okay, and then in 23 it says, and Judah said, let her keep the items for herself, otherwise we will be shamed. And I just thought, oh, so you know you're wrong. Because he didn't want nobody to know that he was trying to go get back his stuff and give her this goat for him sleeping with her, because he knew that he would look foolish. And it says the word shame broke down to seen as foolish, that he would be despised. And that the root, it says to spring from judgment. Springing from judgment. To be shamed is literally, embedded with that is judgment. And so Judah knew that this was wrong, but he did not. It's like he was aware, but he didn't understand. Like, he knew, but he didn't understand the gravity of his, like, he knew it was wrong. He knew it was a sin. That judgment, that correction still did register in his heart. That blockage of all his sin and all of his wickedness would not allow him to do introspective work.
I don't think he knew or felt like admitting sin to who, because he was, again, just still so casual about it. And like, you watch these movies of how the kings were, I mean, they like stay in the chapel and they stay praying and whatever to the priest, but it's like we're so beneath them, right? Peers or people or whatever, because there's no way. He didn't even act like he did it in shame or in secret or anything. It's like he would have never thought he'd be in trouble for it. So he wasn't in no position to make, like, I mean, your kids was dropping dead. Y'all wasn't playing with y'all, but he wasn't thinking about that. Like, why not? He don't see nothing wrong with Stop laying with people and being over there messing with stuff you ain't got no business. It wasn't even like he messed with a girl that would have been okay. He still was over there messing with the stuff he wasn't supposed to.
He just like that refusing that correction like over and over again. It's just whew. So I put Proverbs 6:33. Oh, go ahead, LaTanya, you gonna say something?
It just goes back to what you said in the beginning. He was blinded. He could not see, you know. And the word talks about us having eyes and can't see, and ears and can't hear. Whatever. I think it's just hard for us to fathom that his mind was gone. You know, like he was so the word talks about Abba would let us be turned over to a reprobate mind. You know what I'm saying? It was this like that of all that goodness and stuff, that because there were seeds of righteousness sown into him, but he's over in a land that is totally contrary to how he was raised and what he originally knew. And it really had blinded him. It really had, I can't even think of another word. Like, he was bamboozled. It was just like, it goes deeper, and we read it, but I don't think we're really comprehending how far gone he really was, because we see these things keep happening over and over again, and he did nothing. He just keeps going deeper and deeper and deeper into foolishness.
It really does give me the reminder of like, I was, listening to Kings, or was it, Judges. You don't even think about the story of Samson. Like, how many times, like, your first wife bamboozled,
Right.
your second wife, I don't even know if he married that girl. Whatever, Delilah. Like, how many times did she have to? Like, it was so blatant. It was like, are you dumb? But again, the spirit of fornication, it blinds the eyes. It dulls the senses. Like your the Ruach HaKodesh in you, you are literally stifling it. You are literally, what's that scripture? You grieving it so much, like you can't even see. And I was just like, yeah.
Yeah, it's deep. It's deep. And I think that's what's so hard for us, because it's like, dude, can somebody shake him and wake him up? You are totally asleep. What are you doing? He just continues.
Like it 4 times.
Right. I mean, it's like, seriously.
But it's like we laugh about it. Not that we're laughing about it, but like we're like, dang. But like, how many times in our life have we seen this happen for real? Where you're looking at someone, you might see someone in a relationship, or maybe you were in a relationship, and after y'all removed the blindness from your eyes, you're like, oh my gosh.
Wow. Yeah.
That was an abusive relationship. Oh my gosh. I let that person do that to me.
Right.
Wow. It's like, you know what this reminds me of? Like people who are in narcissistic relationships, after they remove themselves, they can actually see their partner for the manipulation that they were doing to them and the abuse that was happening to them after they come out.
Right. You can't see it while you're in the midst of it. Yeah.
The deep delusion. Like it's a strong delusion.
That's what it is. That's the word. Yeah.
That's why I feel like you definitely have to thank y'all for I say all the time, I mean, like your sisterhood, your village, like kind people to encourage you. Also, crack that whip and tell you when you steering off the wrong way and stuff like that. And sometimes it's a like abrasive, corrective in nature, but sometimes it's a teachable moment, to let you know that you're mixing your spirit. You're mixing this because it's all kinds of stuff. Lord, the guy running out in the street with the dog. I'm gonna need him not to do that. But you mixing your spirit or coming into, because it's all kind of stuff. Like he just wants the moment and blinded by like not dealing with life. But at the same time, it's still you chasing lust. You're not raising your kids. You're still like deceitful. All those other things that come with it. It's not just one vice that he's hasn't come to terms with. It's multiple things. but I am thankful for sisterhood and stuff. And you also, I said that a lot. Like we used to deploy, and you go overseas, and it's crazy when you come back, you realize you got a lot of habits from over there. So if you sat around a lot of people who cussed and smoked and fussed and and all that, you pick that stuff up so quickly, and then you got to try to shed it back off, or vice versa. So he got a lot going on, and it ain't just chasing the girl for his moment of passion. It's a lot.
Speaking from a woman's perspective, it touches on self-worth. I mean, I don't know about Judah, how he was feeling about himself going through all this, or just giving into the sin of lust and constant with these women. But I remember when I was making choices, and I mean, I thought I always had it all together and thought highly of myself, but putting myself in certain positions and making choices that were not so good, it spoke on the amount of self-worth I had back then.
That's a really good point, Gina, because we know that Judah didn't feel, we know his self-worth wasn't what it probably could have been. Because again, that comparison that he already had in him with Leah and with Rachel, and then with him being always compared to Joseph, like this was probably an outlet for him. This fornication was probably a way for him to feel love, to feel validated, which is any vice that you have, is you trying to fill a void that whatever unclean spirit is never going to be filled. It's going to continue to pull you in until it kills you. But that is what that spirit of fornication was in him, that spirit of feeling, like the spirit of lying that he had in him, where whatever he told himself, yes, I have the kingship, it wasn't enough. He didn't feel like he was worthy, or he had like the authority, or the favor of his father. It was still this constant comparison of needing something, and he chose fornication. He's continued to choose disobedience, in all of it. And I pulled out this Proverbs 6, because again, it talks about committing adultery, which Judah is doing. He's committing fornication. It says, but whoso committeth adultery with a woman lacks understanding. We just talked about this. He's blind. He has no understanding. He that does it destroys his own soul. So literally, like we're saying, Yah's coming in here to try to save him, save his soul, save his body. And then it says, like, a wound and dishonor, or a wound and shame shall he get, and his reproach shall not be wiped away. So that kind of goes into what we're talking about, how he continued to refuse correction. He didn't have understanding. He was still committing adultery and fornication. He was destroying himself. He brought shame. Like he's like, we will be shamed. He's bringing dishonor and shame on him, but it still wasn't registering him that this is a reproach. Like you have no shame in what you're doing, but you should be shamed. Like Taryn was saying, he just had no concern. He just thought he was probably above it. But at the same time, that's overcompensation, because he didn't feel like he was worthy. So he was using all these outlets to make himself feel worthy by putting other people down or treating other people less than while doing his sin. Like it's a sick cycle.
No, we're saying that right, but I would be I'm gonna ask my husband probably tomorrow. I want to get like the man's perspective about it, because I mean, even like I have 2 boys, 3 girls, and like they get at an age, and I'm like, hey, you need to be talking to the boys about sex, this, that. He was like, men don't think like that, Taryn. Like, just and I don't know, Tanya, like, is that something Dennis would say or something, or like just thinking about, as much as we're saying going in thinking about its lack of self-control and lust and something and whatever, but their picture of it is like sometimes they don't even feel like it's wrong, because like like they get a pass some kind of way for those sexual desires. Like that's what they built for, that's what it is. And and in my discussion, like what I see, I'm like, if you telling the girls this, it go for the guys too. Like a spirit is a spirit, and you shouldn't be, and something, and he's like, yeah, but like they don't see it like that. Like he didn't see it like that. and it's from an innocent place. But I'm like, no, you got to be held accountable. You don't get to have a pass just because, like, that's how men, like, what do you mean you built like that? You still supposed to have self-control. You still supposed to, or like value. That was a self-worth. Like that's a whole thing. I mean, obviously he was trying to escape some things, but I'd like to kind of hear a man's perspective. Like,
in either perspective, like, obviously I'm not a man, but the scripture says, flee useful lust.
yes,
Because
yes,
we're outside of the covenant that we think that these are okay. Like
Yeah.
the norm, the wicked norm to be loose as a man is outside of what Yah has called us to do.
right.
That's right.
And so
That's,
if
and that's
the
what I was trying to say. Yeah.
yeah, the husbands and the fathers, again, we talked about that, not being submitted, not circumcised under the covenant, what Yah deems as holy and righteous, you will not be able to train up your children in the way that they should go, because you don't even think that it's required. You'll think that, oh no, it's just not. No, you'll see everything as a spiritual attack on your seed.
Yeah. And I was going to add to that. What I was going to add is that I look at it from a spiritual perspective. And what I found in talking to my husband, they don't.
Right,
So,
right.
like, spiritually, we shouldn't be doing this. You know what I'm saying? We allow things to come into us. When we do that, we open ourselves up to different things. And it's not something, I think it's something they need to unlearn, because, generally in society it's kind of accepted for, guys to do certain things, but, and especially with fathers, it's very hypocritical when it comes to the girls.
Absolutely.
They don't look at it the same way. And my husband has actually said that. He even said something tonight, jokingly, and like, if my daughter came home with a 46-year-old man versus my son coming home with a 46-year-old woman, he was like, Tia and Amari couldn't do it, but if Avery came home, and I was like, no, babe, it can't be like that. And it was a joking situation, but it's an opportunity to really, let's flesh that thing out. And why are you thinking that way? Why do you think that's okay? And, and I think that's how we have to do it, because as a society, it's kind of accepted that that's all right, when it's not, because it's not, they're not looking at the deeper repercussions of it.
And when Jarrell was much younger, like, that was the conversation we had. I'm like, I don't want a witch to come steal his destiny. I don't want him to be laying up with somewhere he ain't supposed to be or whatever. But every single day you be worried about where the girls are coming and going. And I'm like, no, it's still an assignment out there to come steal what God has planted in them. So I'm not seeing it as in gender. I'm seeing it as their, divine protection. Like, we should be telling them about the spirit. We should be, and he just like, I don't know, it's a blind spot with the boys. Well, I told them to stay right and this and that. I'm like, yeah, but, like, literally the worst thing ever is for the girl to get pregnant. And I'm saying, like, that's not, wrong is wrong, period. I don't want them to be, unequally yoked, like, whatever, especially from the lessons we've learned. So we've had the discussion, but it is totally different from the male perspective.
Go ahead, Aisha. Go ahead, Akoti.
I was just gonna say, I think Sister Taryn definitely hit it on the head in regards to, like, having to still be that spiritual guidance. And I would just submit that, as the mothers, because I'm not gonna name y'all, but I've witnessed my sisters who speak to their sons, in a way that has been profound in changing their sons' lives and their outlook on that, right? And I would just say, take on the cloak or adopt the proverb mother, because that mother in Proverbs was all over her son and giving him all kind of guidance. And I don't know, I've heard that it was Solomon who wrote it. I don't know, because Solomon did some foolish stuff too, right? So I'm like, I don't know, we got a bunch of different writers all over the place. But what I will say is that mother in Proverbs, and I wish I could just have my Bible pages in front of me flipping. I love flipping through my Bible pages up real quick, trying to find, that exact point to tell y'all, but it's in early Proverbs. I think the first chapter is between at least 1 and 12, at least, where the mother, I know for certain, Proverbs 1 through 5 for certain, where that mother is like talking about these women. She's talking about adultery, fornication, being careful, son, and turning, turning your eyes away from this kind of woman, or this type of lustful spirit or whatever. This mother, this Proverbs, and I guess she's the 31 mother, right? Proverbs 31. That woman, that he's explaining the character of or whatnot. But throughout Proverbs, it's saying, son, abide by this. Son, watch this. And again, it comes back. I know mothers already have a whole lot of responsibility. Okay. And it goes back to what mothers, when they don't, involve. So we have that wisdom too, right? And we have those jewels. And I know he said wisdom is like apples and pictures of gold, apples of silver apples and pictures of gold, like having that wisdom. And Yah has given women that spirit, that ruach, that compassion, that love, that sight, to see, okay, honey, go talk to the son. Baby, you know what, mommy, go talk to that son. Because daddy is in a different place. Daddy is about providing and handling the business. And he's like, hey, that boy got his jewels. He could do. Keep it moving, mom. Mom is like, but honey, no, because we know what's out there. Mama, go talk to that son.
Aisha, I think you're talking about Proverbs 7, the amplified version. Subtitle is the heading for that chapter. It says the wiles of the prostitute.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, I know, Isha, in what you were saying about moms, I took that role on, and I did, I do, and I have been talking to my son, because
I said I wasn't gonna name y'all.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying, we are on here, we're, here to learn and teach and, share with one another. And, sometimes when we see, the mark is being missed in certain places, if we see the mark is not getting, if it's not being taken care of, then we got to pick up the slack. And so, we just got to do what we got to do to fight for our families and for our children and all that. And so, I'm willing to do that, I'm willing to do that. And at the end of the day, we do have our husbands, and we want them. They are the head of our households and all this kind of stuff. And we do submit to them according to Torah and all that or whatever. But if you are a little bit more mature in the word, then maybe your spouse, or maybe they haven't gotten a revelation about something or whatever, then, you need to do what you need to do decently and in order, but you need to do what you need to do.
Proverbs woman has said it, has spoken, y'all. I was, being discreet, but hey, because I've witnessed that example, then living testimonies. And so, I know my baby sister Amari is on here, my baby niece, or whatever you want to call it. And so I didn't want to just call her mama out, and tell all of mama's business, but praise Yah, hallelujah for the testimonies.
So 2 scriptures popped up in my ruach when y'all were talking, how Yah feels about it. Because again, we keep saying like, oh, well, the norm for men is this and this, but Yah's like, this is how I feel about it. In Jeremiah, Yah says that like, behold, I do something new, a woman shall encompass a man. And so like woman guarding, woman covering, because the picture of a wife, she's like she's a covering and a protection, but she also has to keep things out, like with like the thorns. I think the breakdown of the picture of like a helpmate or Nazair, I think it's like a samit, but it's like, it means like a thorn, or basically like a hedge of protection around about, and so that role as a wife, as a mother, you see, this enemy trying to come in, and your spouse being unaware or lacking maturity in the spiritual things is saying, oh no, let that destruction come on in. You're just like, oh no, pull out the sword immediately. And I also, the other scripture that popped up that I thought about was in Hosea 4:14. This is how Yah feels about the situation. He's like, I will not punish your daughters when they play the harlot. So this whole idea that there's this there's this double standard like that we kept seeing, that we see all the time. There's a double standard. Oh, my daughters can never. No. But the sons, yeah, this is what Yah says on the matter. I will not punish your daughters when they play the harlot, nor your daughters-in-law when they commit adultery. For the fathers and the husbands themselves go aside in order to be alone with women who prostitute themselves for gain. They sacrifice at the altar with dedicated harlots. Therefore, the people without understanding will stumble and fall and come to ruin. So, like, when I saw that scripture, it made me think about this whole situation with Judah and Tamar. He wants to judge her for playing the harlot when he himself is going out and committing the fornication in the harlotry. And so we're seeing how Yah's looking at the situation like, why you want to punish her when you're the one you're paying the prostitutes? There's no double standard in Yah's eyes. There's cleanliness. Everybody needs to be walking in his righteousness. Because basically, like he said, that when the head is sick, how can the head expect, oh, my daughter's got to be chaste, but my sons don't have to? Everything's sick. So when you see your daughters, when you see your nieces out here acting loose and moving like whores and prostitutes, and you're wondering, what's going on? Your son been creeping for a long time, and you've turned a blind eye. You said, oh, it's just because he's a man. But you went like, y'all saying, it's like we kept saying, this trickle down effect. It is so for real. And y'all's like, you gonna look at them and call them whores, but like your sons, your fathers, your uncles.
Yeah. And I don't think like our, circle is approaching it like that. I think that like as we're reading through this particular text, is given like it's speaking to us all like different. I wouldn't have broke it down like that. I've read this before too. So it's like very like, wow. So I'm just imagining like I want to talk to my husband about it just to see kind of like how like what do you think about it? What would be your perspective, or what like how would you like do you see it the same way? He was coming and going while I was sitting in the kitchen, like because that was a lot of meat. That was a lot of stuff when you go back to say you started off in the wrong place, you did this, and then kind of just see his perspective of it. Because he just, a lot of times where I might be like over the top with something, even though he's like not in disagreement, is like he'll just say like it's just different, and I'm just trying to figure out like what would make you think different, I'm just wanting to know how to connect more with him that way.
Yeah, trying to find a point to start the conversation to see like what part of your thinking is just you and your own understanding, but how much of that needs to be changed if we look at it biblically. To have those conversations. Again, like LaTanya said, decently and in order with your spouse. So like, because again, if both of y'all are on the same page with Yah when it comes to these things, then the house is even more fortified.
I had a question. Well, kind of like a statement, but I guess it's a question too. So I'm recently engaged in just I don't know, the combining of two different pasts and like upbringings. Um and so long story short, I've been, raised in the church and everything and I don't know, I guess kind of just going along with this double standard, I guess kind of um topic of like kind of what we're talking about. So my fiance, his father passed while he was young, and so he hasn't had that like male like role kind of thing. And so I've seen him kind of attached to my dad a little bit, and that's been very encouraging. However, I think just also being cognizant of some of the things that, like y'all are talking about that, like, I guess males kind of like turn a blind eye to because they're kind of like, oh, well, I'm just a guy. We don't look at it kind of pretty much like what all y'all were talking about. And just being prayerful for that. I was, yeah, just kind of like asking for prayer about that and, how to, I guess, kind of approach it, with him and like speaking about it. Yeah.
Yes, this will definitely keep you lifted in prayer. We do closing prayer tonight. We'll definitely we're gonna basically talk about all of this because
Yeah.
I think that this goes into like, we opened the prayer tonight about like, wanting the husbands and the men to like get into this heart posture of seeking Yah and surrendering their ways to him. And I think all like the fact that we're talking about all of this, and this is very male centered, this study, we're also talking about like the woman's role, but again, the trickle down effect from the top to the top down, which is why it is so imperative that we do stand in the gap, that we do pray, that we do intercede, that we do cover our husbands, our spouses, our fiancés, our children. When like Jeremiah literally says like, behold, I do a new thing, a woman shall encompass the man. Like I'm seeing, there's just like a high influx of the daughters of Yah seeking him, and the sons are still kind of like dragging their feet, not really being serious about this spiritual work or the things that are literally coming to make war with their seed. And so the enemy knows that, and if he can keep the sons of Yah in this false mind, double standard hypocrisy state, it will keep everybody sick, because that is their role, is to have the authority over the house. If we can keep the heads of the house sick and dysfunctional, being okay with certain types of wickedness, it will affect the entirety of the house. Now, by the grace of Yah, he puts righteous women in the mix to go in there and to pray and to cover your kids. We talked about that, like the kings in the Kings and the Chronicles. Like even with all that wickedness, there was righteous women, there were righteous wives that raised up righteous seed. But to instill it in the husbands, that if your son, your daughter becomes righteous, make it so prayerful that they're trained up in the way that they won't go and dismantle that by marrying someone who doesn't understand. Because they might be righteous, but then they marry and they're unequally yoked. And the dangers of how quickly your unequally yoking can dismantle your entire bloodline. So it's not just enough for you to be walking in righteousness when you know better, but you still marry someone who doesn't really know, but kind of okay knows, but doesn't take it seriously. How that can be so detrimental. Like we think it's little, but that's how the enemy, he's the most subtle beast in the field. He been at this game for a long time with corrupting seed. So I wanted to point out like the judgment without self-reflection. And so again, Judah's saying to her, like, you played the harlot, bring her out and let her be burnt. And so that's why I put out that Hosea 14, like, how dare you, Judah? Like, Yah said he's not going to judge the daughters when they commit whoredom and idolatry, because you're committing whoredom and idolatry, which is like, that's the scripture I would use when men try to bring up this double standard. Like, go ahead and read Hosea 4:14, because this is how Yah feels about it. Why are you out here telling your son, what we going to do? You no, tell him the enemy is creeping up on you. Like he wants to take hold of your vessel. And so this whole situation made me think about what Gina mentioned last week about the woman caught in adultery in John chapter 8, where it says the woman was caught in adultery and the people were just like, she needs to be stoned. And Yahushua's like, all right, well, let the one who has never sinned throw the first stone. So we're still in this same vein of, if she was caught in adultery, where's the man that she committed the adultery with? Why are you just trying to stone her? It's that hypocrisy. We want to say, oh, your daughters are having sex with friends, shame on them. They need to be more chaste. But your son is literally out here doing the same things, but you want to ridicule your daughter, but not correct your son. That's this whole picture. We're seeing the picture of the woman caught in adultery with Judah. Yes, it takes two to tango. She can't commit adultery by herself, And so again, in Genesis, I'm going to keep going back between Genesis 38 and John 8, because then Tamar says, by the man to whom these belong, I am with child. And she said, please determine who these are. And in John 8, verse 11, Yahushua says, all right, but let the one who has never sinned throw the first stone. Then he said to the woman, where are your accusers? Are they here to condemn you now? And she's like, no, Adonai. And he says, well, neither do I. Go and sin no more. And so even in this situation, with Judah and Tamar, when he realizes that he has no leg to stand on to try to say that she needs to be burnt for committing adultery, his mouth is shut. Her accuser has to shut up. Shut the mouth of my accusers, O Yahuwah. Like, he shut Judah's mouth so quick. And then he says, like, he never touched her again. Like, go and sin no more. He said, okay, I'm done. There was enough for me to stop this foolishness that I've been doing. And so I put, like, Judah, like many of us, find it easy to pass judgment, even on the very act of fornication or harlotry that he himself was involved in, and would probably continue to do had it not been for judgment and forced examination of self in a public way, everyone seeing the hypocrisy of Judah. The shame, the sin he tried to hide was now on full display. He was quick to call her out, to burn her, but he sent her away. He allowed for the evil of his sons to afflict her. He did not cover her as head of his house. He was a covenant breaker. He was the liar. He was the fornicator. If she deserved to be burnt, so did he. Judah was humbled. And so a lot of the stuff that I just said, like, y'all have already said all tonight. I know Taryn mentioned, like, you know, Judah was he was supposed to be covering her. He didn't do what he was supposed to do. All this judgment is now in his face. He's seeing all his wrongs. Go ahead, Sister Rachel.
Shalom, y'all. I have just been listening and taking notes, and so very thankful for you guys discussing this so in depth tonight and talking about all of these different things, but all of the different things, these different dynamics in what we've been reading. And the one thing that I wanted to, the one thing that is a new thing, this is a new thing for me, is I start to question stuff. I say, why is that there? But why is that there? And in looking at this whole interchange and this whole chapter, I understand the focus of Judah. And to me, it seems like it's a fair warning, right? It's a huge warning because by right, Tamar is a Canaanite. I mean, I know that there are some rabbis that like to say that, no, she was a Israelite princess and that's how she could be married to Judah. And it doesn't match the story, right? It doesn't match the fact that he sends her away. It doesn't match the fact that Judah is jacked up in his character and he's picking out of pocket, left stuff. Why would he pick a righteous wife for his son? Like the story doesn't match, right? But Tamar, the Canaanite, goes through this entire scenario, right? And it's later, right? When we get over to Matthew, that Tamar is listed in the genealogy of Yeshua, specifically by name, specifically and she's the only mother that's listed that way. She's the only one. And to me, this story about Judah and the cautionary tale is this. Sometimes we can get so, Sister Samara said it earlier. She was talking about, the adage of thinking, how could you be so stupid? How could you be so stupid? For me, I didn't see stupidity in here. I saw arrogance. I saw a level of pride and arrogance that's out this. How I'm gonna give you my staff and give you my cord and know it's mine? How I'm gonna get it? Cause I don't care. Cause I'm Judah. You don't know? You don't know who I am? No. It's the arrogance and it's the pride. And the thing that I see in this passage, the thing that I see that stands out the most in this passage is don't get too ahead of yourself. Because there are some people in the walk. There are some people who are still traveling, what I like to call traveling through westernized, colonized Christianity, right? Where they're quick to say, but no, we're the church. I'm the bride. Da da da. He'll forgive me and da 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 da. Like all of the things. And I'm like, But at the end of the story, when it's all said and done, the thing that the Most High honors is he honored Tamar, that Canaanite. Tamar, that one who isn't part of the covenant, who is not a born in part of the covenant, being that she was already part of the lineage she was married into. It was her that he upheld. It's her that shows up in Matthew by name specifically when we start running down, okay, how did we get from here to Yeshua, right? And I think that that's very, very important, that while that this is a cautionary tale, that you can be the chosen all you want to. You can be the named all you want to. You can be part of the called out, chosen all you want to. But if you don't have the character, if you don't have the obedience, if you don't have the walk, it's not you. It's not you. And so I'm just hoping that for anybody who starts diving into this message or hears it in the future, I'm like, it's about Judah, but this is also about Tamar and about how the Most High is a honorer of principle, not title, not the thing we put on it that says, oh, this is the important thing. No, he says my principle is what's important. And because my principle is important, I'm not finna let you malign her. I'm not gonna let you do these things to her. She's gonna end up in the record as being part of how we get to the thing that serves as our salvation. So I just think it's important to see this larger picture of, because like nobody else has this. It's nowhere else in Genesis. A whole chapter to tell this woman's story. I think it's amazing. And then this last little part has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but really it does, but it doesn't. I, I, when we talk about our men and we talk about their duality, right? About how their hypocrisy of how they can condemn women for behaviors that they are partaking in, right? As though they are separate and not engaged with and not entangled with at all, right? It's the age old thing, right? It's the age old argument that started all the way back in the garden because it was Adam that said, but this woman, irregardless to the fact that when you read the text, it doesn't say that Adam was separate from Hava when that interchange happened. But he said, no, 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 but it's her. So, like, that's a big thing. Like, that's a big thing that has happened since literally beginning of the timestamp of Adam and Hava, right? And then this other thing, when we talk about a consideration, right? This is one of these wild, thrown out thoughts, y'all. These one of these thoughts I don't have any scripture to. It's just a sanctified imagination type of a thing. Okay, so don't beat me up. I feel like women have a deeper type of connection to the Most High and what He wants and His will, and we're connected in a different type of way. I'm not saying it absolves men. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying our connection is a little different. And the place that I see our connection is a little different is when you go back and you read in Genesis about the account of Hava being made. We tend to think in sequential time, right? This happened and then next this happened and then next this happened, right? But in that verse, when it says that he pulled out the rib, he made Hava, he formed her Hava, and then he brought her to Adam, there's no time in there. It doesn't say next week he brought her or the next minute he brought her or the next day. We just kind of read and we assume, oh, he made her and then he presented her. My own sanctified imagination says that there's a time period in there. That in this forming of Hava, that there is a, for lack of a better word, a time period by which he spent with her that caused us to even now eons, thousands of years later, have this connection to him that is not the same type of connection. Not saying one's better or worse. That's not what I'm talking about. But this connection, because there's no time period there between when he made her and when he presented her. Because I'm like, okay, when he made her, we assume that he made her full grown, but what if he didn't make her full grown? Like, what if she grew up? Like, we don't have any, there's no explanation for that, right? So in my world, I'm like, oh, this is kind of why we have such an attunement, I think, to the Most High, because we have a certain type of attachment experience that goes beyond that goes just beyond. I don't want to say surface. I don't have English words for this right now, but I'm saying that our connection is different, and because our connection is different, then we become responsible in a different type of a way, and how we safeguard, how we shamar, how we guard Torah, how we live out Torah, because this is the truth. This is the truth. And this I'm going to give you a secular example. Excuse me. I'm going to give you a secular example. Over in China, I think it's Japan. There's this movement called Plan B. And basically the women over there decided that, you know what, y'all men are out of pocket. Y'all are out of pocket. And what we're gonna do is we're not sleeping with none of y'all. We're not gonna sleep with you. These are secular women. This is not a Christian movement. This is not a religious movement. These are women that's just like, you know what? We know how to make y'all act right. We know how to get y'all in check. And they are talking about how there are changes being made and discussions being had because these women are banding together and saying, you know what? No cookie over here unless you can figure out how we're going to take care of child welfare. Like it's a whole movement, and it's actually been in place since about 2022, and it's just gaining all of this momentum and all of this steam. Why do I bring that up here on our Bible study? Because one of the ways that our men are kept in check is because we present the holiness. Not that it's our only responsibility. They're responsible as well. But they wouldn't be able to be whoremongers if all of my sisters understood their value and their worth to the Most High, and that what they have is precious from the top of their head to the soles of their feet, and that if that that this power, this thing, this innate way that the Most High made us literally rocks the world on all type of little levels, and that if we knew that, we could effectively use that for kingdom building, and effectively use that for healthy families, and effectively use that for healthy relationships, be it parental or relational. Like we could do all of that, but you know, such is the path we watch. But I think it's very interesting. I am fascinated by the Most High's use of Tamar, and how he just kind of put her in there as this testament, right? That says you can't just rely on I'm chosen. You can't rely on I'm a Hebrew Israelite. You can't rely on that. Don't mean nothing. The Most High is going to honor his principles, and that's all he care about. And I'm gonna lay down.
Hallelujah. When you first started talking about, when you brought it back to Genesis, when you were saying like we don't know the time, I was watching a study. I think someone broke down that like it said he made woman, and that we're just like that whole like he had to fashion her,
Mhm.
like he had to literally like mold her and fashion her. Like he took a piece of the rib, but then he did this detailed work of producing another human, but not in the same way that he made Adam. And so you're very right. There's a different type of work that Yah did when forming the woman. And I think it's also, like I always say, I think it's beautiful that in all of that, the picture that I see is it was Yah's design to make Adam, to make man wait for her while he was fashioning her and forming her and creating this and doing this beautiful work. And then he presented her to him. But before all that happened, Adam had to be completely surrendered. He had to be asleep. He had to be laid. He had to literally be laid down to allow this fashioning to happen. And so when we think about that in submissive terms, like, he had to be made to be submissive to receive the formation of the woman. And so when we think about it, hindsight now, the men are not asleep. The men are not asleep, but the men are not surrendered. The men are not laying down. They're not allowing Yah to do the anesthetic work of creating something new in them, therefore not being able to recognize the good thing that is giving the wisdom that Yah fashioned for them. And so, like we say, the circumcision of the heart is literally it's like going to the doctor and you got to get put under anesthetic to get this deep heart work done. Adam had to go under the first ever anesthetic surgical work. So if our men will not allow Yah to put them under the knife, it's like, like, I don't even have the words, but yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to add to that. I'm trying to find the reference. I was reading in the book of Jubilees recently, and it talks about how Yahuwah made Chawah not in the first week, but in the second week, because he said that there wasn't someone there for Adam, Adam, that he needed someone. And I want to say it talks about in there what she was saying, that was a period of time. But I'll look it up and I'll put it in our chat, the reference where I believe I saw that. I can't find, and I don't have my Jubilees up here right now. So I'll get back to you guys. But I think we do have something that indicates there was a separation of time there before she was presented to him.
Thank you for those confirming scriptures. And I kept saying that we're going to go back and do a Genesis chapter 2 study, because we kind of talked about a lot of this. So a lot of stuff that we talked about in Genesis chapter 2, we're hitting on again, because we're seeing the perfect function. We're not seeing it in this story, but like, as we're talking, we can see the perfect functionality of women, how Yah designed us, and the perfect functionality of how men should be, and how he designed them, and how the proper protocol is to, like I said, to be surrendered, to be submitted to the cutting. But when that doesn't happen, you have, like, maybe one is surrendered, but one won't surrender to the cutting of the circumcision of the heart, and how, the enemy can come in and sow discourse. And we brought it all the way back to the beginning. The beginning of the matter, it was established to see the picture. I'm talking about this all week, about Yah establishes the end from the beginning, and for him to, again, I'm gonna reiterate this, Jeremiah, I think it's 31, where he says, behold, I'll do a new thing, a woman shall encompass a man. But it's like, it's not really new when you see the functionality of woman, new as in renewed, because that was her first estate, because Y'all fashioned her that way. So we're trying to get back to the first estate before sin entered, before error and disobedience and rebellion came in. How did Yah design us before it entered into the world? That's the promise. That's the restoration. But yeah, Miss Rachel, if you could, do you have the links or the books in which yours was telling you that Tamar was from the land of Canaan? She was a Canaanite, because when I was reading the Testament, it said that she wasn't, like, it specifically said that she wasn't a Canaanite. And so I just want to be able to like cross-reference the different sources that I'm using, because again, a lot of these extra biblical texts, you know, also still have to be scrutinized and tested. So I just want to, you know, have that for deeper study.
I'll see if I can find it for you, but this is one of those contested arguments, right? There are some people that say, like I said, she's an Israelite princess of royal descent, but then there are others that say no, she's actually a Canaanite. And so just from the two different arguments that were put forth, I went back to the text and I was like, okay, and I went back to the text to decide which side I was going to be on, because it does not definitively say, right? That's one of the things. It does not definitively say what her ethnicity is. And then, that's also one of those things that the Most High does. But I do believe she's a Canaanite, but I'll find that information for you.
Because mine didn't say that she was a Canaanite, but it also didn't say she was an Israelite. So I never had the concept of an Israelite Pinterest. Mine was that she was from the line of Shem, but not from the line of Shem connected to Abraham. So, but it mentioned like Mesopotamia, the tribe of Aram, but I think that's back to Shem. But like, no, Shem had some seed that wasn't obedient either, and so either way it goes, she wasn't an Israelite. So I never had that understanding, and so yeah, I would love those sources to just like dig a little deeper to see where else it was like, you know, attesting to like her lineage.
Why
But
is it always
I'm sorry. I was just saying, like, at the end of the day, like the story still is the same. Like the principle, the learning of the story still has the same weight, I believe, you know. So yeah.
I was just gonna say, we're back to once again battling a sexual sin. It's I mean, some of it could have been from the, sexual perversion, some of it from lust, some of it, but it's like it's always drama or confusion, discord, whatever, centered around like sex, period. Like that's the thing that it's hard for us to submit to. Or in one part of our life, we can submit to it, but then get lost, or maybe vice versa. But like that's the growing theme throughout all the generations, is that they struggled with the lust or some kind of sexual sin.
Yep, that's that repetitive thing we keep seeing. Okay, what's the last part? Because we are coming to an end. Let's see, where do we stop at? Verse 25, I believe. Okay. She said, whose cords are these? Judah recognized them and said, she is more righteous than I, since I wouldn't give her to my son Selah. And he did not sleep with her again. When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. As she was giving birth, one of them put out his hand. So the midwife took a scarlet thread and tied it on his wrist and said, this one came out first. But when he drew back his hand, his brother came out. She said, so this is how you have broken out. And his name was Perez. Then his brother, who had the scarlet thread on his wrist, came out, and his name was Zerah. Okay, I think I have broke down Zerah. I didn't get a chance to actually put it in the notes. I think it's directly connected to like the word seed, which I thought was interesting, since this whole debacle happened because they kept spilling the seed. But now that, we're getting to the production of restoring the line of Judah, we're seeing these two twins. And then, one of these boys, I think is it Perez? I don't know if it was Perez or Zerah to end up being the line of Yahusha, or the line of King David. If anybody has that breakdown, or has that, or knows if it's, I think it's listed in Matthew. um, Yet Perez, which his name means breach. Which I thought was beautiful because Yahusha came to seal up the breach, and the twin that the line of David through Hamashiach comes through is the twin whose name means breach. And what was the other brother's name? Perez's name means breach. And Zara's name, I'm doing it in real time, y'all. Zara's name means okay. Zara's name H2226 rising. Huh. Oh, okay, that makes sense because she just assumed like he was gonna be first because he stuck his hand out. Again, back to that. I talked about this before, like the firstborn, the secondborn, and then like the secondborn being raised up, and so seeing this continue like reoccurring thing. But that's all I got tonight, y'all. We're gonna pray out unless y'all have any more commentary or insights. But yeah, I really enjoyed tonight's study. I didn't know who was gonna be able to get through all of it because like it's so many different topics in here that we could pull apart, you know, that we did pull apart.
You did a great job, Samaria.
Ooh, hallelujah. All praise to Yahusha because ooh, y'all, I'm gonna tell you I did this at like 6 o'clock this morning and then didn't get finished until 10:30 this morning. And then I went to sleep and slept for 4 hours, 4 or 5 hours. And I woke up. But like when I tell you in the midst of writing the notes, I just had like, it was nothing but the Ruach HaKodesh because I was just like, I had a gust of energy and I just didn't even realize the time had went by while, you know, writing up these scriptures and like having y'all like say, okay, talk about this and then pull this out. And so to see how we needed to talk about all these different topics because we talked about healing, we talked about motherhood, we talked about fatherhood, we talked about women's design and when used properly, when used in error, like it's so much here. We probably could have broke this down into 2 calls, but Yah had his way and yeah, hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Good. Excellent.
Whew. Yeah, girl, I love Genesis 2, Natalie. Genesis 2 is definitely one of my favorite chapters because we get into all these deep things like we talked about tonight. And so I appreciate y'all so much for studying with me, for stretching me, and that we're stretching each other because this is definitely a highlight of my week every time.
Look forward to my Friday.
Same, like a highlight of my week. Yes.
But yeah, if you have any prayer requests, praise reports, we're about to. Is anybody would like to close out in prayer tonight?